Hello, Feely humans. Welcome to another episode of You Me Empathy. This podcast has been going on for over 5 years, which is bonkers to me. Wherever you're listening, however long you've been part of this journey, I'm grateful for you. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for listening and connecting and perhaps relating to our beautiful guests. And today's guest on episode 246 is Kim Johnson. Kim is building community at Geneva, a New York City-based messaging app for clubs, groups, and communities of all shapes and sizes. Really grateful for Kim in this conversation. We get deep on community and what that means. We recorded this back in, I believe it was August of 2022. So it's been some time since we connected. And since we connected, I've launched a membership community. Not on Geneva. Sorry, Kim. My needs were a little bit different, but Geneva is a special thing. Launched it on Heartbeat, and I'll get into that in a bit. But I want to share a little bit about what community means to me. I really didn't get into too much detail in the conversation, but since launching the membership community, and if you want to learn more about that, and please join. You can join as a free member, you can join as a paying member. If you, for some reason, for many reasons, many valid reasons, can't afford to join as a paid member, please email me, hello@feelyhuman.co, hello@feelyhuman.co. If you want a sliding scale option, if you want 50% off for your lifetime or for 6 months or whatever, I truly don't want money. Money's dumb. I don't want it to be a obstacle to this community that we're building together. So if you go to feelyhuman.co/membership, link is in the show notes for this episode as well. feelyhuman.co/membership. You can learn more about the community and about what we're building over there. But I wanted to share a little bit about what community means to me, and I want to ground that in what I came up with in terms of our community agreements, which I share on the membership page as well as inside the community. And I'm just going to kind of read through these and sort of comment on them as I go. So these are the Feely Human membership community agreements. And the first one being lead with empathy. If there's a core to what it means to be a Feely Human, it's empathy. Empathy is about meeting people and ourselves where they are. As you step into this space, remember to lead with empathy always. Empathy is our foundation. So the commentary here is that empathy is crucial. It's what this podcast is about. It's what Feely Human is rooted in, and it's something that we need not take for granted. You know, I've said many times before that it's not a checkbox. It is a active, ongoing, messy affair, superpower, and it could be used to manipulate. It could be used to completely sort of deny ourselves and bypass parts of ourselves that maybe are uncomfortable. And it can be used also to just kind of ignore certain things in our lives and used incorrectly, if there is a correct way. And I think that's different for each person, but empathy for me is messy, it's ongoing, it's mushy, it's reflective of the universe and our world, and we need boundaries as part of empathy. We need scrutiny and curiosity and bias awareness and assumption awareness and all of that. It's not just like, let's be kind to one another. It's much deeper than that. It's about listening and being present and examining all of that all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. So that's the first. The second one is listen actively. I'm going to just go through the rest of these and not read them because I'm already making this forever long. But second one's listen actively. Third one's honor privacy. Share the space. Acknowledge intent and impact. Embrace discomfort. Practice vulnerability. Honor intersectionality. Brave space. Accept feedback. Ask for help. And it's not therapy. As you know, I've often said on the show, I'm not a therapist. I am a silly boy with lots of big feelings. and some experiences, but I'm not a therapist. The root of, one of the things I also have talked about and I reflected on briefly in my conversation with Kim is that as we build together community, there is there has to be an awareness of what safety means for each of us. I can't ever presume what safety means for you, listener. I can maybe sometimes not completely know what it means for me, but I can't presume what it means for you. I am a white cis het man living in the world. I have privilege. I have a certain amount of privilege from like being scrutinized or ridiculed or certainly abused by these systems, And so I show up in the world differently than you may. And part of empathy is about meeting people where they are. And what does that look like, right? What does that truly look like in terms of community? Is it allowing for people to show up in the way they need to, right? So I have this new membership community, and what does that look like? So what is showing up for you look like, and what does showing up for me look like? And how can we honor both of those things? And how can I not sort of, be tested or disconcerted over, maybe what I perceive to be a quote unquote lack of participation, right? Maybe that lack of participation is connected to your boundary and what maybe doesn't feel safe for you yet to participate or to show up in the way that you want to show up eventually. My hope is that we get there, but like I can't presume that, and that's unfair of me to do because it's not honoring the intersectionality of your human experience. And so I've been thinking about this a lot with the community that we're building, and this reality that like, yes, I put it together, but the reality is like it's been a long time coming, and it's been sort of fostered and ruminated on in connection with all of you, with the listeners, with the Feely Human community, with the folks who have attended my workshops and the folks who've listened and reflected back on this podcast and shared with me how it has impacted them or how it has helped them see something new or related to a guest. All of that is integral to where we are with this community now and where I am as a human. And that is invaluable. It's you can't even put that into words, that valuable piece of this connection we have together. And so, there is a tendency toward like community builders in the world or content creators or whatever, like just people, white men, who tend toward like relying on the fact or highlighting the fact, on social media or their blogs or whatever, their tattoos, their license plates, that they did this alone, right? That they are masters of their own domain. They are kings of the world. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Bootstraps? I like that. And that they had no help along the way, which is just not true. It's not true, right? I think of the people who've helped me along the way. And it's all of you, really. Like I wouldn't keep doing this podcast if it weren't for people who I know are listening. Yes, do I want to hear from you from time to time? Yes, because it's lonely sometimes. But truly, if you're not listening, then, I may not do it. And it just goes back to we need each other. We grow in connection with each other. We learn about our differences. We learn about our blind spots in connection with community. It's why I'm building this membership community. It's why we are building this membership community. I don't want to be a king of this domain. Like I truly want to build it together. And that may be naive, right? I may be missing something there that I'm not seeing yet. And I am open to that. And I want to talk about that. And I want to get uncomfortable in that space, reflecting on that. But we can't do it alone. We're not meant to, whatever that means. God or universe or the great flying spaghetti monster, whatever it may be. We're not meant to be alone in this. I don't know if any of you are watching the show The Last of Us on HBO Max. It's very dark, and there's episode 3, I believe, was one of the more beautiful episodes I've ever seen on television. It's kind of what they call a bottle episode, where it's separate from the main story. It's connected, but it's a little separate, and it's just this beautiful, mostly a two-hander, which means like 2 characters in it. And it's about love. It's about us needing each other. It's really stunningly beautiful. It made me cry. And if anything, if you're not open to like end of the world, apocalyptic, dark stories, and you just want to see this episode, I highly recommend it. It's episode 3. Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman star in it, and it's just stunning. And it just reminds me of why we need each other. Okay. I'm a broken record about this stuff, but I know that I need the reminder in the face of fucking capitalism and you know, entrepreneurship and these fucking systems that, you know, I used to work at this job that I liked for the most part, and I liked the people, and I thought I was valued there, and ultimately I was not. And it's just another system that just keeps plugging away and telling people that they're, you know, fucking individualists, beacons of strength, and it's about making more money and what you know, it's not for me. It's not for me. And I understand that, you being a feely human, that it's probably not for you too. So all of that to say, here's my pitch. With all of the sincerity and deep heartfeltness and beauty and weirdness that I am, I would love to have you join our membership community. Yes, it costs money to join as a paid member, and that feels icky to me, and I don't like that. And like I said at the top, if the cost to you is a burden to joining, don't let it be. I will, you name a number and I will allow it. I will let you in because I don't want money to be an obstacle to this space. And if you want to just come and check it out and see what's available, join as a free member. I would love that too. And I love you. And I appreciate you listening to me babble on, which, by the way, Babylon is a movie starring Rory Scovel, who was on the show recently. And I haven't seen it yet. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this, Jordan or Rory. I apologize. I want to. I really do. Because I like the director and I love Rory. And I love you, Jordan, if you're listening. Any hoozles. Thank you for listening to me Babylon, the movie, starring Rory Scovel. And thank you for being a part of this space with me and this podcast. And I love you. And I hope you enjoy this episode with the wonderful Kim Johnson. Here we go.
Me, empathy, yeah, la, la, la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans, trying to be human on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. You, Me, Empathy was created so that we can be witness to our collective humanity through the lens of empathy, vulnerability, and emotional curiosity. We aim to destigmatize mental health, lead fiercely with our hearts, feel our feelings without shame and judgment, and share our courageous stories so that others may feel less alone and more connected as feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a brave place designed to inspire the beauty in each of us, because each of us in all of our kaleidoscopic parts makes up a magical whole that deserves to be seen. Today, I am grateful to connect with community builder, nurturer, and grower, and head of community at Geneva. It's Kim Johnson. Hello, Kim.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. I loved that.
Thank you. I'm very happy you're here talking about community. This is actually top of mind for me as someone who's in the process of trying some big things with Feely Human, but we can get into that in a bit later. We always kick off the show with an emotional check-in. How are you feeling?
How am I feeling? Honestly, when I got on this call, I was a bit frazzled. I've had a day of meetings. I've had one of those days where my lunch was cereal because it was the quickest thing that I could do in between meetings, And I actually feel now, after talking to you for like 5 minutes, I feel I'm taking a little bit of a deep breath. Like I feel like my day is coming to a nice end. I'm having a drink with a new friend later, which I'm really looking forward to. So I feel like I'm coming off a little bit of a ride,
Yeah. So most pertinent question there is, what cereal? Was it Trix? Are you dealing with
Okay.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch? What are you having?
I already know people are gonna be like, this girl is bougie. I got this, like, I don't know what it's called. Oh, I wish I could get the bag because I want to shout them out because it's really good granola.
Okay. All right.
It's granola. I think it's called Early Bird or something like that. Granola.
All right.
It's so good. And I had it with blackberries and oat milk.
Delicious.
It was
Sounds
pretty
amazing.
good.
Yeah.
It was pretty good, I gotta say.
No, I mean that doesn't sound bougie. That sounds appetizing.
Yeah, it's very appetizing. The granola is, every time I buy it, I'm like, this is more than I should be spending on granola. But,
yeah, I hear that.
we all have our things.
Yeah, I mean, breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day.
Hello. There we go.
Yeah. and meeting a new friend, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And it's someone who, this is going to be so awkward if she listens to this, but who we have mutually like observed each other's career paths. And she sent me a note and she was like, I've always observed your career path and want to have a drink. And I love that kind of thing because I've been trying to lean into that more too. Not even on trying to find like a mentor, but just like peers, And yeah, so I was so tickled by that. And and the drink is in my neighborhood too, which is always nice. You can walk to it.
Great.
Such a good feeling in the summer in New York,
Yeah. So there's something interesting there, which is, you're head of community at Geneva, you're doing big things, you've done big things in the world. You're a person who is in charge of stuff, you're leading, you have a team, it could be a lonely journey, right? Like I feel the wanting, like I feel the wanting to have peers very strongly.
Yeah. What's so interesting about that? It's true because when I started doing community, which was, what is this year? 27 years ago now. I was at a beauty company, and I was building community there. And that was 2015. And at the time, brands weren't really building community a ton. It wasn't something that they were investing in. Oftentimes, if you were doing community at a brand, you were working with influencers or you were doing social media. And I was like, creating group chats and events for like our customers. And that wasn't something that I found a lot of people in my immediate space were like doing. And so I really actually did always crave that for a long time when I was in that work. And now I feel really lucky because one, like I Geneva is an app for communities. So I'm like surrounded by people who build community every day, and it's like the best thing. Um, but I think there is something to your point for me of like always getting really excited to meet new people, especially like young women who are in the space and like actively building in it and actively trying to, you know, find their own path in this space, because I think community is can mean everything and nothing, especially when it's your job, you know? And so it's always exciting for me to meet new people who are just like genuinely like building and looking to have conversation about it, you know?
Right. Well, and there's maybe a distinction there is like you're facilitating community building for other people and you're not necessarily part of those communities, right? And so like I feel the pull of like, yes, I am building community and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And sometimes I feel like because I'm sort of the quote unquote leader of said community, I feel a little bit of an outsider. Like I want to like ingratiate myself more. I'm like, hey, I'm one of you.
Yeah.
And it's true, I am. And also he's the founder, or
Yeah.
you know, she's the founder or whatever. And there's sometimes feels maybe a societal barrier there.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because I talk to people all day, every day. It's like, it's what I do. And a lot of times I am talking to people who are figuring out and really excited about building a community, but they're trying to figure out the how, or they're in the beginning stages and they're like, they're just figuring their path with it. And one of the things that I always say that I really believe, and I think like if you are building community, it is a core acute experience that you have, and you know it if you experience it, is like community building is a very vulnerable thing to do, because community is so personal, and it requires a level of like humility, I think, frankly, especially in the world that we're in today, where everyone is so distracted. Like we're in such a distracted world, especially when it comes to the internet.
Sure.
And when you're building a space for people, you want to build something that has meaning and depth of meaning for people. And so sometimes you're going to do things in the community where maybe you organize an event, right? And you put energy into it and you put effort into it. And then people are like, I'm not really interested in that. That's not really for me. It might be for a range of reasons. And so it can be very vulnerable to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like trying to do all these things for people, but the people aren't interested, or but that's just like that's the evolution of it all. Like, and so I do think that there is something to your point about, I kind of am in this interesting place where I work with a lot of my job is actually like helping other communities build their spaces for their people.
Right.
And it's interesting. And I often feel like a kind of like connection point, one of my favorite things to do. I mean, that's obviously is why I could do community, but one of my favorite things to do is like, this person is trying to get over this hump and this person has just gotten over it and they need to like come together, like that kind of stuff. I love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. And I love this idea around vulnerability being sort of a rooted part of building community, because ultimately, like, if I'm taking myself as an example, the community is about what is deeply in my heart, right? And that's inherently vulnerable, right? And so if you're saying like, I am building this thing, and that's if you're interested in that thing, great. But there is going to be, you're going to be disappointed, right?
Yeah.
In a way, right? Because some people are not going to be into that thing, or whatever. You're setting yourself up for feedback, criticism, which is great, which is what you need. And it's vulnerable. It's all those things.
Yeah. And I think too that what's a big adjustment for a lot of people in thinking about building community is we're really um, attuned to the idea with social media. We're really attuned to the idea of like crafting a narrative and building an audience, right? And we're
Yeah.
really attuned to like one-way dialogue, honestly. Like we're attuned to like sharing things and then not really getting into depth of conversation about them. And we're attuned to like consuming content from other people or other entities and then
Yep.
like thinking that feeling like it's conversation even though we're not really having a dialogue about it.
Right.
And so I think a large part of that vulnerability as well comes from the fact that like community it's not even two-way dialogue, it's like multi-way dialogue or something. I don't know how to
Yeah.
phrase that, but it is bigger than the individual. And so I think that can also be scary when you're building community because you're kind of letting something go, right? Like you're democratizing something and you hope that it works and you still feel responsible for it, but also it's not fully yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big piece of it too.
So the collective piece of community is near and dear to my heart. We live in a world that is, and by world I mean maybe uniquely American culture, right? This valorizing of individualism, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing, though it can lead to some pretty toxic things.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of building community as this part of sort of this collective coming together, and this idea that we grow in connection with each other, and that requires the vulnerability of understanding that I'm going to learn new things, I'm going to gain new perspectives, I'm going to bump up against my own bias and assumptions about people.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be mindful of the intent and impact and how I show up in these spaces. Like all of that, is like in my mind, the sort of the healthiest, most inclusive, like beautiful communities are really thoughtful about how they talk about those things and how they encourage their community members to, lead with their hearts in those ways and allow them to be changed and moved. And that's deeply vulnerable.
Totally. I completely agree. I think, yeah, it's so interesting to see. I think a lot about like the evolution of like this idea of like a creator on social media and you know the idea of the term creator, content creator, I think originated from YouTube, right? Like the content creator identity originated on a platform where people are like spending 2 hours plus creating mini television shows, essentially. Like that's like how much production and work can go into YouTube on their own. Like they were doing it solo dolo. And of course, obviously, content creator has evolved to mean a lot of things, encapsulate a lot of things. But what I get really excited about, especially in relation to what we see and the kinds of communities that we see really thriving on Geneva, is I think there's this like new realm of creator content / community creator that I'm just like really excited to see blossom over the next few years. Of people who are they go less from like building a huge audience on a social platform to then having a community, but rather like a huge part of the thing that they've built is a community that they are a part of, but like is so much bigger than them. And it's really, really cool to just see, like, especially, I say Gen Z, but like young people, Gen Z creators, quote unquote, building just like new kinds of ways of being on the internet, for lack of a better way to put it. And I think that they're going to just like really revolutionize like what the social internet looks like. Like, I think if there's a revolution of the social internet, it will come from those people. I think about there's this creator who her name is Kate, and she's a podcast called What the Fuck is CMOS with her best friend Emma, all about wellness. They've created this like wellness meme page on Instagram that has like a cult following. And they have a Geneva community of like 7,000 people talking about wellness. And I always look at them and I'm like, what they're building is like into the future. You know, it's more than like just one lane of conversation. It's more than one kind of way of content or storytelling or conversation. It's really, it's like the sum of its parts.
Right. So when I think about something like Instagram, you know, and I have a love-hate relationship with that platform, it does, you know, to speak to what you said earlier, it does feel often, especially of late, that I'm just speaking into the ether and no one's listening, right? There's no real connection happening. Yes, I have a mid-size audience, right? But audience is not necessarily community, right? And then when you can sort of build on a platform like Geneva or other places, right? Hopefully it facilitates a bit more of what you're talking about. So I'm curious about like what are the like tenets in your mind of a platform? And you could just speak to Geneva's sort of tenets, but like of a platform that truly facilitates what I want in a community, which is like deep connection and conversation and challenging each other and getting together around ideas we're passionate about, and not necessarily siloing ourselves into these ideas and becoming armored up against other ideas into the world, but a place where we can be who we are and grow in that beautiful way. Like, what are some of those, I guess, maybe the values of Geneva, but also a little bit of the structure of it too? Like what facilitates that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are a couple of things that come to mind for me when it comes to how we think about the kind of tenets of being a community platform or community app. One is accessibility. I think the way that we've approached Geneva from day one has been intentionally a kind of sitting in between what feels like a group chat at the end of the day, like what feels in the ease of conversation and the way that, you know, you set up your space like a big group chat, but also has the kind of like robust tooling and flexibility and power, frankly, of a community platform that can serve tens of thousands of people in a group, right? And so sitting in between those two, kind of meeting both of those and sitting in between them was really important for us, because I think at the end of the day, what we know is that it's so important on an app like ours for a member of your community to be able to come in and feel like, oh, this is my space to be, to share, to have conversation, right? That there isn't this like barrier or hierarchy dynamic of how they can take part.
Right.
And so what was essential in order to do that is to make an app that feels like a group, that, you know, a space that where you can make a space that feels like a group chat. But then on the other side, for the builders or leaders of those communities to have all of the tools that they need to make community building more accessible to them, right? Like, I think one of the things that is less a topic of conversation when it comes to community is just how like logistically difficult it can be, frankly.
Yeah.
You know, because like I was at a brand before this, and my days were usually spent in between Slack and email and social media and Zoom and a Google Calendar invite. And that kind of complexity does not allow for someone who is not whose community is not in their job title to actually be able to build a community that they just want to exist in a way that's accessible to them. So
Right.
it's a balance. The accessibility piece is really key because it's both for your members to be able to feel like this is intuitive to me. I get it. I've been here before in a sense. And also for the community leaders to have the tools at their disposal to build as robust and complex a space as they wish, but in a way that is simplified for them so that they don't have to go through all of these hoops in order to make a community that they want. So that's piece one. And then I would say piece two is safety. For us, we think about, I mean, I say safety in a really kind of like broad sense for sure.
Yeah.
But I think, we think about safety and moderation in the app kind of at the ground level in the sense that like the best tool that a community has to keep its space safe and to keep its conversation the way it wants is its members. And is the people. Like the community, the people make up the community. And so your people are everything when it comes to what your culture of your space is and everything like that. And so we think a lot about safety from the member level and giving members the ability, again, in an accessible way, to take part in the kind of ownership of the safety of the space. And I would say safety and accessibility are probably the key things, but it's interesting because we're leaning into discovery more, which I also think is really interesting and exciting because when we think about like, what are the tenets of being an app for communities? Accessibility, safety are key, but we're also seeing that there's so much desire for people who want to discover communities and conversations with people like them. And so that's a really interesting one that we're just starting to tackle now of how do we help facilitate that for people so that a funny example is like Thrifters in Dallas, which is a community on Geneva. So the people who are in Dallas who love thrifting can find their people, or Staff Lit, which is a queer book club started by a TikToker, so that people on Geneva who want to take part in that can. So that's another one that I think is an interesting one for us.
I love all of that. The safety piece is interesting, right? And I've thought about it a lot, especially, right? So in the conversations on this show, in the spaces that I hold, there are conversations around mental health, right? And I am not a mental health professional. So the disclaimer is always like, yes, I'm not a mental health professional. And we can talk about these things. But like the safety piece is tricky in the sense, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. I can't necessarily presume the safety of everyone, meaning like everyone has their own ideas of what safe feels, right? So I've talked about this before. So I, as a white cis man, shows up in the world and maybe feels more safe than another person who doesn't have that inherent privilege, right? And so how do we even have those conversations? Have you thought about that kind of thing?
That is a really interesting question that I think all communities have to face and tackle. And I think every community in that sense is quite different in terms of, what does safety look like for us? What language is appropriate for us? And so we do have that conversation a lot. And I think the thing that I believe is like every community should be able to a certain degree, have the tools to be able to define what safety looks like for them. And I think that at the end of the day, it really does come back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that the community is a collective. And so what I see a lot is that the people who are the most attuned to, this doesn't feel, right for this space, often and the quickest often are the members of the community first, and then the leaders respond, right? And oftentimes leaders are really tuned into that too, but I think communities that are really successful do a really good job of instilling that in just the culture, as a through line. And so the members, feel a sense of ownership of that, of the maintenance of that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important.
It's very important. I mean, it's the collective defining of what the space is. Like you said, community is not the person who creates it, it's the people within it, and you're constantly sort of shaping what that is. Hopefully, right? Hopefully it's not a static thing, hopefully it grows and ebbs and flows in a way that feels aligned to the people.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm curious, like, I think about, growing up and like what community looked like to me growing up. And I remember being part of the Boys and Girls Club, and that felt sort of fun for a while, and being on soccer teams, and that's sort of its own type of community, right? Like, what were you part of any communities growing up? Not necessarily online communities, but because I think community can be a term that can be used. Yes, you can create a community on Geneva, and that's beautiful, and you have a hiking group, and that's a community, right? Like, so I'm curious for you, like, were you part of any communities growing up as a kid, as a teenager?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so funny because even just pulled back from that, what you're saying about community is really interesting, because we think about community so digitally today by nature of like where we all are. Yeah. But like when community at its core is like so many different things in our lives, and like I think, I like hesitate to reference this because I feel like it's really kind of a little bit cliche at this point. But like, I do think that one of the things that the pandemic really did show us is how much community is in our everyday life, because it was so removed, right? Like, in my neighborhood, I live in Brooklyn. I know the people who run the grocery store down the street. I know the people who work at the coffee shop 2 blocks away, right? And like that routine and ritual is a part of my life, and also that element of community is part of my life. And so I think it becomes really clear when you don't have access to it how much community is in your everyday IRL life.
Yeah.
But I think for me as a kid, it's funny because I was like a painfully shy kid, like so crazy. It's so crazy that I work in a job where I like talk to people all day and host events, because you could not have paid me to think that would have been my job when I was a child.
Humans have the capacity to change. I mean, would you still call yourself shy in moments?
I would say I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I say that because I think like there are some people who get like really filled up by being around other people. You know what I mean? From an energy perspective. And there are some people who get really filled up by being alone. I sit somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
For most of my life, I got filled up being alone, but now I've learned how to appreciate and get filled up being around other people in small doses. But anyway, back to your question. I honestly, when I think about communities that I was in as a kid, like I was a little bit of a theater kid, so that was definitely a part of community for me. But one of the most kind of defining communities for me as a kid was actually probably my family, which sounds a bit funny because like no shit, but I'm from the DC area. My whole family is in that area, like whole family. And one of the biggest things for my family on my mom's side growing up was we had family reunions that were like 200 people when I was a child. And that was like a huge part of my life. And so even, it's so funny because like, you know, you have your parents and your siblings and even your grandparents, and that's the immediate, you know, but then you have all these other elements of like socializing when you have like extended layers of family. So I actually think that that was a huge part of community to me as a kid.
Yeah. Sounds
And
like it.
quite defining, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, 200 people, family gathering. That's
I
quite
know.
quite a thing.
I know, and it's funny because they always used to happen in my, and it's funny that we're talking about this because one, since the pandemic, we haven't really had a family reunion, but two, it's really interesting because as we get older, the family reunions have like really gotten so much smaller.
Mm.
And honestly, I don't even go as much because I don't live in the area anymore. I live in New York. And I have this real kind of like internal battle about that.
Mm.
Um, because now I'm like talking to you like you're my therapist, but I'm like, dang, this is really something that because um one on a personal level, like I want for my kids to experience that kind of community that I experienced in my family.
Yeah.
But two, I think it's such a representation of just how our world is moving, you
Mm.
know? And that and also that I'm like contributing to that. So I don't know. That's a conversation you and I can have on a different time. But
Well, I love it. I love it.
yeah,
I think it's a perfect example, and we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty, but it's a perfect example of, I believe, and I think you believe, you've said it, where we are going culturally. Like we are seeing, yes, highlighted and exacerbated in some ways by a pandemic where we were locked in, not seeing each other, afraid of each other even, right?
yeah,
Not visiting family for fear of, giving people COVID and all this stuff, right? But I think it's such a beautiful and loving thing to say, like, yes, I want my kids someday to be surrounded by people,
hmm,
right? And like I remember growing up, there was a certain way that my parents were kind of isolated us in some ways,
mm,
in some respects.
hmm,
And that led to a lot of division within the family and a lot of division
mm,
within my own heart and how I
mm,
like saw other people, how I saw others, right? How I saw
mm,
different groups of people, how I saw whatever. And so I think that's problematic. And maybe it
yeah,
goes back to like, yes, we need to like hearken back to these times where, yes,
yeah,
we know the names and we're friends with the people at the grocery store and and this is the community and we see each other and we care for each other. What does that look like?
I know. I mean, it's like it's interesting because I mean, I talk to my mom about this a lot, and I always like ask her about her childhood growing up because she grew up in DC in, you know, at the time, DC was like a very black city, and they grew up in a black neighborhood, and it's like at that time in like the 60s, 70s, that was such a community, like,
Mm,
you
mm-hmm.
know, in a way that I didn't experience growing up as a kid. And I, you know, you have that kind of like, oh, I wish that I had gotten to be, I don't wish something for some things at that time, but I think it's interesting just to like see the way that, you know, we have evolved, like things have evolved in that sense. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because on Geneva, one of the group types that I see most popular right now are like local communities.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like a home for queer women in Philly. We have a home for Black women in Philly. We have a home for girls in Philly of all types.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
have Denver hikers, and they're so popular right now. And I think it underscores everything that we're talking about, which is in kind of the like beautiful combination of when these two things come together, which is like social media and like the digital landscape generally can give us such access to people all over who are interested in the same things as us.
Yeah.
But so often that connection stays on our computers or on our phones. And so what we know is that people are like really craving that in person. And so it's so, so, so cool. There was a community called like Chicago Craft Club, which like makes me want to weep because I think it's so sweet. And they have these like crafting sessions every month where they just craft together. And it's so cool to see that because I think that's like the ultimate, most optimistic version, idealistic version of what the online version of community can do, which is like really bring people together in a way that allows them to come together in real life.
Yeah, and we need both. It's both and.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
We need that in-person human connection, and we need the online stuff too, because that allows us, like you said, to connect to people from all over the world, which is exciting, and perspective building and all that stuff. Yeah. So, you obviously after this, you're meeting up with a new friend. Like, how are you, in addition to obviously like leading Geneva, which is a digital space, and are you for yourself and your sort of Brooklyn area fostering in-person community?
I'm really not. And it's funny because there's two things that I really want to do. And, I've kept saying, oh, I don't have the time. I'm so busy. I don't have the time. And the reality is like you make time for things. And I've been thinking about that a lot over the past couple weeks. And trying to break down for myself, like, it's not about having the time, it's about making it. And so what do you want to make the time for? And also be realistic about your health and your life and all the other things that you do.
Yeah.
But there's two things that I want to do, which are, one, I really want to start a book club of like Black women readers in my area, because I know so many who are like dying for one.
Yes.
So I kind of want to make my living room into a little like salon book club. That's
more
just
book
like
clubs,
a dream.
please. Yes, more book clubs.
Total. That is the thing that'll probably take a little longer. But the second thing, not as in person, not as IRL, but I also am thinking about like starting a little interview series with people who are in the neighborhood, like in the area, also interested in community stuff. So I don't know, nothing quite yet. But those are the things that are floating in my brain all the time.
Yeah. You're feeling the pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it lasted about 8 months, and, people got busy and stuff, and while it was occurring, it was beautiful. So like in the middle of the pandemic, I would have this thing called, family reading hour, friends and family reading hour. And every Sunday people would come over around 10 in the morning, and I'd have a bunch of tea and coffee and things of that sort. And we'd all, kids, families, we'd come, bring our own books and just read for 2 hours in our backyard. We'd just read whatever book we wanted to read. And it wasn't like a book club. There was no like pressure or anything. And it was just like intentional reading time. And I've been wanting that back because it was, first of all,
I'm
just
obsessed with that.
Yeah, it like I love reading. If you can't tell from my books are portals to empathy, and so on the simple level, it kept me reading, which I love reading, and then two, it was just this cool thing to like get kids to be engaged in reading and to just take intentional time to like slow down and do a thing, right? It's like putting on a record, right? And just sitting down and listening to it, front and back, it can be a beautiful, like mindful experience?
I love that so much for so many reasons, but partially because um, those kids are probably gonna, when someone asks them at 29 what communities they're a part of as a kid, they're probably gonna think about that.
I hope so.
Um,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. That's really, really cool.
Well, and I guess I want to bring this to listeners now is like truly, if you have a passion, you can build community in whatever way that you want. And it could be three people, around the idea
Hmm.
around hiking one specific trail in Los Angeles or something, right? It could be very specific. It can be as broad as you want, with the intent of whatever you want to make it, but really about connection, right? Connecting with others over this shared interests and
Yeah.
via our shared humanity.
Yeah, 1,000%. You are preaching to the choir. I tell people that all the time. Like, if the community that you want to be a part of does not exist, that is your call to create it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Me too. So what, in terms of Geneva, like where are you all at in terms of like what are your goals? Like do you
Yeah,
have goals? Do you have like some big things coming up? Like what's exciting in
yeah.
the future for you?
Yeah. So, I guess, just to set the stage at the highest level, like the way that we started building Geneva from day one and the mission has always been to be the messaging app for communities of all shapes and sizes. And so for us, what that has looked like is, we have everything from like sororities, book clubs, K-pop fan clubs to creator-led communities, brand ambassador programs, activist communities, um, and kind of everything in between. And so, really, the mission over the coming months and just an extension of what the mission has been since we've started building 2 years ago is to give communities all of the tools to create the spaces that they need or they want in the world. And so to date, what that's looked like is like basically having what I consider like the foundation of community, which is every way to communicate, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
have chatting, you have posting, you have, if you want to have an audio hangout with someone, if you want to have like a FaceTime feeling roundtable with people, if you want to have an event on a virtual event stage, you have all of that. You have built-in event calendar. You have all of the roles and permissions like we talked about. And so, for us, that's like the foundation of all of the things that all communities need to be able to pull from to create their space. And then as we go, it's really like layering on more tools to allow people to do more things with their members, with their people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I mean, at the highest level, that's kind of the vision for how we've been building and how we think about everything that we're doing.
Nice. It's wonderful.
Thanks.
And what's the you mentioned accessibility is like one of the main sort of key tenets. Like what is it did you pay for this? Do you pay for Geneva?
No, yeah, we're free to use.
Okay.
So anyone can make a home on the app and create their space, invite their friends. And the way that we'll ultimately make money is we'll of course have like a pro tier that people can like subscribe to with special stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll also allow communities to have tools to layer monetization into their space. So if you have an event that you want to say you charge for access to, or a
Right.
room with content that you subscribe to, we'll in the future allow people to do that.
All right. Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's very cool.
Thanks.
I'm seeing more and more of platforms like, akin to Geneva out there, which is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super
I'm really
exciting.
excited about what this space um, looks like. And, it's so crazy to say, but even just 7 years ago when I started building community, like I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, where are all the things that I can use to do this?
Right.
And so I'm excited to see the evolution of this space so that more people, and especially more people who aren't even, community managers by day, but are doing it out of love, have more tools to be able to make the spaces that they want to see.
Yeah.
So,
And it's also like in my mind too, what I've seen, like community as like a buzzword type of thing in business,
mhm.
right? In sort of entrepreneur lands, and what you're doing, and I think what some other folks are doing is really getting to the heart of what community is, rather than like we're doing community, which can be performative and can be like buzzwordy, right? Community,
Mhm.
the term itself like has a ton of applicability and application. And I love that Geneva and what you're doing and facilitating for others is ultimately about that connection and coming together. Um, yeah, because we're not
Yeah,
individualist beacons of strength. We're collective strength
that
and
is
mush. Yeah,
that is no, that's it. That's
yeah,
so true.
yeah. Hmm. Well, Kim, let's talk about empathy heroes. So we
Hmm.
always kind of transition out of the show talking about people in our lives who are empathetic, compassionate, could even be characters from stories we love, movies we
Hmm.
love. I will go first to give you a moment
Okay.
to think about your empathy hero. My empathy heroes this week are the Feely Hikes crew. So I do a monthly Feely Hikes where we move our hearts and our bodies. We talk about feelings while hiking, essentially. And it's wonderful. And sometimes there's just a few people, sometimes there's 5 to 6. This last Sunday, Arafat and Craig joined me, and it's always lovely. It's always beautiful, and we always kind of get deep. And while we're, sometimes hiking with dogs and hiking in new places, and it's a beautiful, like, small part of the Feely human community that I've fostered that I really love. It's one of those IRL things that I really cherish each month. So just shout out to my empathy heroes, Arafat and Craig,
Love that.
for this week. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had a couple that came to mind, to be honest. The first person that came to mind is my best friend, Gina. I tell her this all the time, but I truly do not know a more like empathetic person than her. So it's honestly, I'm truly blessed to be best friends with her. But she is such an empathetic person in a way that I admire so much. Um, so she's the person who really comes top of mind to me. And then another person that I would say is, oh, it's so interesting because I've had so many conversations with like people building communities on Geneva who are so thoughtful about like building spaces for that really mean something to people. So one of the people I spoke to today who comes top of mind is a woman named Darian. She's a beauty journalist first and foremost, but she's also like a community builder. And she's just doing really, really interesting stuff in the realm of like beauty, especially for and through the lens of Black women. And, thinking about building community in such an intentional way, in a way that is so rooted in like something that people love and show and that shows up for them and that they show up for.
Mm.
Um, And so I loved where her heart and brain were on that topic. And so I'll say her as well.
I love it. I love it. So Gina and Darian,
Hmm.
Empathy Heroes, love it. Yeah. I mean, our communities need to be meaningful for people, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
impactful. And yeah, I love that. That's great. Okay, so Kim, where
Mhm.
can the Feely humans out there learn more about Geneva, connect with you, all of that good stuff?
Yeah. So Geneva is just at Geneva on all social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. So definitely check us out, send us a note. And if you have questions, you can always send me a note. I am kim@geneva.com. I will forever share my email. Both my work emails, I've only had 2 jobs. Both my work emails have been Kim at. And I really cherish that because I'm a community person. So I always am like, let's talk, let's talk.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I'm just Kim@Geneva. But also my Instagram is kimjohnson._, because I have a common name. But yeah, check us out and hit me up. If you're interested in community things, I'm always down to chat.
Amazing. Well, listeners, all the links to Geneva and to Kim to access the platform and connect with Kim are in the show notes for this episode at feelyhuman.co. Kim, what a lovely conversation. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.
La, la, la.